Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Friday. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Jay Cohn. A federal judge denies any pre-construction work on the Keystone XL pipeline.
The question is what work will be allowed on the controversial project while a new supplemental environmental impact statement gets completed.
Just last month, U.S. District Judge Brian Morris halted construction, but did allow for certain pre-construction activities to continue.
Now, today, Morris clarified that ruling, blocking all physical construction on the project. That means developer TransCanada cannot start to dig, build man camps, or any other pre-construction work until that full environmental review is complete.
In his ruling today, Judge Morris wrote, quote, such activity would create a bureaucratic momentum that would discourage other federal agencies from rejecting the project or altering its route to account for the revised environmental review.
The judge is, however, allowing TransCanada to conduct cultural, biological, civil, and other surveys necessary to comply with the mandated environmental review. Now, today's clarification, a win for environmental groups who sued to block the pipeline, including the Northern Plains Resource Council, the Indigenous Environmental Network, and the North Coast River Alliance.
As proposed, the Keystone would cover some 1,100 miles from Alberta's tar sands, crossing a half-dozen states, including Montana, connecting with an existing pipeline in Nebraska and heading with crude oil to the Gulf Coast.
In other news, a U.S. attorney in New York recommends a, quote, substantial term of imprisonment for Michael Cohen, the former personal lawyer to President Trump. And new documents reveal how former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort violated his agreement. In a case involving campaign finance violations, prosecutors did not advocate for leniency because they allege Cohen's crimes, quote, reveal a man who knowingly sought to undermine core institutions of our democracy in order to profit personally. Today, Mueller also detailed how Paul Manafort breached his plea agreement with repeated lies.
Elsewhere in Washington, a bill to give added protections to Native American women appears to have won bipartisan support in Congress. Savannah's Act passed in the U.S. Senate unanimously late last night. Introduced by North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp, Savannah's Act was named in memory of Savannah LaFontaine Graywind, who was abducted and killed in Fargo, North Dakota. This measure requires the Department of Justice to update online data to include a new field for a victim's tribal information. Montana Senator John Tester, one of the co-sponsors, said everyone in Congress needs to work together to end violence toward Native women. Savannah's Act now is on its way to the U.S. House.
Turning to weather, Bob, it's getting colder, and there are some important things for people to remember when they are playing outside in Montana.
Especially if you're going to go out on the ice. Let me show you an example. We go to the Bighorn Reservoir and take a look at this. With all the cold air we've been having lately, Lynn Richardson got this picture for us, and it's starting to freeze, right? So we were wondering, well, how thick does the ice have to be before you can go out on the ice and do stuff? So here's what we found out. As you can see, if it's about 2 inches or less, you need to keep off the ice. That's still pretty dangerous. But if it's 4 inches deep, you can do some ice fishing. It needs to be 5 to 6 inches deep, or thick, I should say, for snowmobiles and ATVs. If you want to drive small cars and trucks on the ice needs to be 8 to 12 inches thick. And if you want to do the big vehicles, like a medium truck here, it's got to be 12 to 15 inches thick. 18-wheelers, I don't know why you'd want to drive one out there, but that's got to be even more than that, probably about 2 feet thick. Anyway, our forecast is talking about some warmer temperatures anyway. We'll chat about that in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob.
America pauses to remember this day 77 years ago when the U.S. naval fleet was attacked by Japanese fighter planes at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
That attack killed 2,403 Americans and eventually plunged the U.S. into World War II. Today at the Yellowstone National Cemetery, a special Pearl Harbor Day ceremony held at noon. Flags were raised, names were remembered, veterans were honored.
Today's ceremony, a salute and honor to all World War II veterans, especially those who are buried at the Laurel Cemetery. The names of some 200 veterans were also read out loud in remembrance.
The attack on Pearl Harbor left Americans shocked and saddened and hastened the U.S. entry into the war.
There aren't many people left who were alive and remember that day, and even fewer who were there and survived it. Our Russ Riesinger talked to one Montana veteran who witnessed it all firsthand.
I watch TV from 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock, except on Monday nights I watch Antique Roadshow Monday night. By 9 o'clock, I'm working on the computer. I do that till 10, then I go to bed. I'm going to go up and get the picture.
"77 years have passed since that fateful day when Hal Conrad found himself in the middle of a moment that would change the course of American history.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was a great surprise. Surprised the hell out of me.
It was supposed to be his day to sleep in after getting a pass to Honolulu the night before.
5 o'clock in the morning, they shook me awake and charged the quarters. It was shaking me. He says, the guy's supposed to guard the water tower from 6 to noon. Is sick. You're going to have to take his place.
A couple of hours later, looking out at Pearl Harbor, Conrad noticed silver airplanes he thought were U.S. Navy planes training. They weren't.
I watched the first plane drop his bomb, and I thought it was a dummy until it disappeared behind the trees along the fence line between me and Pearl. And black smoke started rolling up, and concussion started rumbling through, and I knew it wasn't a dummy. I grabbed my field phone, called the CP, and I says, "The Japs are bombing the hell out of Pearl Harbor." And the guy says, "You're still drunk." So then about that time, I was ready to hang up, and I heard this sound like a chair crashing. This voice comes on the phone, "Somebody shooting me." I said, "That's what the hell I'm trying to tell you." And I hung up and went back to walking my beat.
The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor had begun. Before it was over, 18 U.S. ships were sunk or damaged, almost 200 U.S. aircraft destroyed, 2,403 men killed. As the onslaught continued, Conrad came under fire by the passing Japanese planes.
Everyone that went by there had a backseat gunner, grinning like a Cheshire cat, pop off a few rounds at me. I found out later there were 40 of those planes. I think every one of them took a shot at me and everyone missed.
Later, he would find out that the barracks where he would have been sleeping had he not been called into duty that morning had been hit, many of his friends killed.
It's a good thing I had to go on duty when I wasn't supposed to.
Otherwise, you would have been in there.
Yeah, I would have been there. Yes, I was planning to sleep in. Because it was the first morning I'd had a chance to sleep in.
Now at the age of 97, Conrad is one of a dwindling number of Pearl Harbor survivors left to tell the story of that dark day. When asked why it's important that Americans remember Pearl Harbor, he gives an answer you might not expect.
Because that was a surprise attack that shouldn't have happened.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Apparently, Roosevelt knew about it, but he'd promised Churchill we'd get in the war. And he knew if he let the Japs hit us, Congress would declare war immediately.
Whether that's true or not has been the subject of debate, but the attack on Pearl Harbor will go down in history as the impetus for America's entry into the Second World War, a war the U.S. would help win, thanks in part to guys like Hal Conrad. We
wound up living through it, but I've had a heck of a good life ever since. I can't complain. I can't even complain about that down there because I've survived. It's been my life ever since. And I got to do everything I wanted to do.
In Lewistown, I'm Russ Riesiger.
Yeah, that's what we used to call our go-to-hell hat.
MTN News.
As you can see, his hat still fits. Hal Conrad doing quite well, even at 97 years young. He told Russ that he still drives. In fact, he passed his driver's license test this year without wearing glasses. So keep on Russ and keep on Hal.
Up next on Q2, the holiday spirit was alive and well tonight here in Billings. We will check out the Christmas stroll.
And coming up in sports, Scott hears from Carroll's new head football coach. Some big shoes to fill in Helena, replacing Mike Van Diest.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.